I'm just going to walk you through how I might make a figure for a report. And, there's going to be variation in terms of design just because people have different opinions about things. But there's some general principles that I think are useful to think about. So here I am in Excel. So I've opened this up and I have my independent variable here and my dependent variable here. And you might have other information, but you don't need to worry about that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come up and I'm going to highlight by clicking and dragging on these two columns. And that's going to select all of the data. So you can see I have a lot of data here. And then I am going to click Insert. And I'm going to pick a chart. And the chart I want is the scatter chart. So I can do it this way. I can also go up to the very top, click Insert, go to chart, and what I want is XY scatter. So there's two different ways you can make a chart. So now I've made a chart, but there's actually a lot of things that I can do to improve this chart in terms of making it a little bit more clear and a little bit less distracting. So one of the first things that I always do is I maximize the white space. So white space is just basically anything that's not a line. It's the stuff that's white in this case. So by default, most of your Excel or Google Sheets or any of that, they'll put these little grid lines on there, and they're not actually necessary. And in a lot of ways, they're a visual distraction. So I actually go ahead and delete those because we're not interested in figuring out. They're there so that if you zoom in, you can see what number a particular point is, but we're not interested in what number it is. We're interested in the trend, which is kind of this moving, increasing, and then flattening out over time. And so the grid lines are actually detracting from looking at the flow of the overall data. So I always delete those straight off the bat because you almost never really need to zoom in on a particular point. And what those do is they detract from this line right here, this curve in the data, which is really what I want to emphasize. Now, the other thing that I'm going to do for white space is I'm actually going to change how this graph is titled. So what you'll find if you look at professional scientific figures is they don't put the title at the top for the most part. They actually put it underneath the finished figure as a longer and a little bit differently formatted caption. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on this and click delete. And that's what I did for the other ones too. So let me go back to the grid lines to repeat what I did. I click on the grid line and then I just click the delete button. But you can also click on the grid line and right click on the grid line and click delete as well. So there's a couple different ways you can get rid of it. And here I can click on this and I can either click the delete button or I can delete it like that. All right, so now I have maximized my white space. And so everything that's on this graph now is necessary in order to give the information I need. So I still need these numbers down here to show the range that this curve goes over. And I need these numbers again to show the range that the dependent variables go. But I'm not done because I've taken away everything that doesn't need to be there, but there's a few things that need to be there to give some essential information. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go up here and I'm going to add a chart element. So there's a little thing up here. And I think that's the main way to do it. You could probably also right click. I always do it that way. Yep, that's the main way to do it, is up here, add chart element. So I'm going to add titles to my axes. Because just looking at this, you wouldn't know what these are. So I've just called these generically independent variable and dependent variable because this is a generic graph. But normally you would never say that. You would say, for example, the grams of sample or the temperature or whatever it is that you're directly measuring. So here I would put, and I'm just going to click and type in here and put, this is the independent variable. And there's one more thing I need, which is to tell you what the units are. So that's what I would do. And just as an example, what this might be is the concentration of sugar in percent mass per volume. So that would be what you might do if you had a particular one. So I'm going to keep this as independent. Variable with the units. And then the same thing over here. Dependent variable units. So that's just how that would look. All right, so that's more or less what I want. Now remember, I took out the title, so no one knows what this graph specifically, kind of the context of it, which is not good, but we're gonna get that back later. All right, so I am going to click on this. All right, oops. Come back here and then click on my graph. I'm going to right click. So I'm going to click off of it to make sure that nothing on the graph is selected. And then I'm going to right click on the graph and I'm going to click Save as Picture. And then it's going to, I can pick what type I want. I'm not sure what the best type is. All right, and this is, it calls it Picture 1, but I want to call it Formatting Figure Example. You can call it whatever you want to. All right, so now I'm done with Excel, and I'm actually just going to show you how to submit this. So I'm going to come to the assignment. I'm going to click Submit Assignment because there's one more thing I need to do. So I'm going to click, here's a text box. Now I'm going to embed an image. So I'm going to take that picture that I just made, go to My Files is where I'm going to save it. And here it is. Open. Now, if you want, you can put some alternate text in here. This is if someone has a screen reader and they can't see, it will tell them what the image is. And then I have to move this around a little bit to get to the update. I'm going to click Update. You can see here's my image, but I'm not quite done. All right, because again, this doesn't have a title, so I'm going to do what they do in scientific papers. I'm going to give it a caption. So I like to bold this part that says Figure 1, and then I unbold, and then this is a graph. I would probably say something, usually the best formula is, what is this graph? So this is the dependent variable plotted as a function of the independent variable. And then I might do something to give a little context. So something like samples were collected over time, or maybe in triplicate, and context. But you want to keep this fairly brief. You want to say just enough so that if somebody found this dropped on the floor, they would know what it was and where it came from. But they wouldn't be standing there forever reading it while people walked all around them. So just a real quick little bit of context to this figure. And then so once you've got your figure all cleaned up with the white space eliminated, and then also this little information down here, then I'm going to submit this assignment. All right, so I've submitted it with confetti and butterflies. And just in case you're curious, when I go in to grade it, I'm actually going to come in and I'm going to see, here's the graph, and then here's your caption to the graph. And I'll go ahead and I will score this and give you some feedback on how you did.